Raise your hand if you do not agree that adding data to your worldview enhances your ability to understand a problem. Excellent. I'm delighted to join you all this evening. I'm a recent transplant to the Bay Area. I was dragged kicking and screaming out of Chicago. I don't get a lot of sympathy for this because apparently I've landed in a very nice place. I lead an R&D team at Accenture Technology Labs. So it's fun to be here in SAP Labs. We're sort of Accenture's version, which is the R&D lab whose primary goal is to look at technologies that are anywhere from a year or two to maybe 3 to 5 years out from widespread adoption and use by ourselves and by our clients. It started out as an analytics person seeking to understand and identify patterns and trends and activities in large data sets working on SAS on a mainframe. If you were the DBA at my client, you'd see me coming and either run the other way or start throwing things at me. After that, I went on to SPSS, which is an analytical software company where I spent a couple of years working on their data mining workbench, where I got deeper into the algorithm side of the business and started to understand how we, the types of techniques and approaches we could take to make those things scale over large relational data sets. So we started looking for technologies that would unlock the value of that data in a way that was useful and didn't necessarily allow another Teradata salesman to retire. Nothing against Teradata, but if you try to use it for your meter data, you will allow a Teradata salesman to retire. The last couple of years, we've been looking at a lot of these technologies and seeking to understand. You may be aware that Accenture has a fairly healthy data management and BI practice. How do these technologies impact that world? And what possibilities do they open up? I don't know if you can see it so well in the light, but that's a very tattooed arm, and it says unstructured down here, and that's a nice, elegant hand, and the tattooed guy is putting the wedding ring on the structured data's hand. How do we bring those structured and unstructured worlds together, right? If you're obsessing about methods and trying to figure out if a neural net or a support vector machine is going to better predict X, you're trying to hop lines. Most man-down solutions typically focus on that one point of data and some heuristics around how long people stay put where. They don't tend to bring in the knowledge of the process that's executing and the holistic view of how that process is executed over history. What's interesting about this to me is that the debate has been about structured versus unstructured or SQL versus no SQL. The debate should be about geometric versus scale out, scale up versus scale out. Scale out lets you encourage use. It lets you seek analytically driven insight that gives value to your organization in every corner of it in a way that's economical and valuable. This, I think, really does change everything from a data management point of view. Right? It's a very valuable thing to be able to integrate these worlds, and as BI practitioners and as data management professionals, I'm sure you all, as like I have spent lots of time integrating data sources to do analytics to be able to make observations like this, right? We got our start building accounting systems, and for sure, if somebody gives me $20 and I give them a beverage, or we have a business exchange, it's probably pretty important that you and I agree that I gave you $20 and you gave me a cheeseburger or whatever, right? So it really, I think, points to a fundamental change in how we manage data. So if we agree that we should and that we've got some raw capabilities that make it economical to do so, that doesn't actually solve all the challenges we need to solve to realize the promise here and actually drive data-driven decision-making further and further into our enterprises. What we'd really like is the ability to put something in the middle to marshal data around our organization in a way that's efficient. If we introduce a countervailing force in the organization in the form of the Chief Data Officer, which shares the unfortunate CDO acronym with collateralized debt obligation, but getting that organizational power and interest in data as a strategic asset, so you're not simply thinking of it as a cost center, is one of the forces that we suggest clients introduce when their CIO organization is one of those very, very cost ones. Some of them are more business-oriented, and it's not really necessary, so it's not a blanket prescription by any means. But having that countervailing interest in preserving as much strategic value in data as you can is an important thing, I think, for organizations. Data is becoming one of the most strategic assets an organization can build up. I mean, if you look at Netflix, obviously they've learned a whole lot about how people interact and think about movies. And even if we were able to just blueprint and copy their entire IT infrastructure with no data, we'd still be a long way behind, right? If I am running the distribution center and I'm worried about things like outages and the current electrical state of the grid, chances are my queries are going to span a lot of devices asking for their instantaneous status, right? A very wide and shallow query, if you will. If, on the other hand, I'm more interested in predicting customers' next 15 minutes of consumption, now I want to look at long histories, right? A narrow and deep query pattern. And if I optimize my data store for one, I've just probably de-optimized it for the other, right? Ideally, we would like to abstract data from its storage for the use of applications, which is, it's the age-old promise of SOA, except we'd like to really, this time we really mean it. Bezos famously said at Amazon, "Thou shalt not build a point-to-point interface. Thou shalt not build an application-specific data store. You will build data platforms and expose that data as services, and if anybody wants to touch it, they'll do it with a service call." And that's how they manage the complexity of having literally 500 different data products every time you pull up a page in Amazon. It's crazy how many service calls are actually constructing them. The problem is that if I want to put my data to incremental use, another use, in a traditional relational database system that scales geometrically, my last terabyte of processing and storage is going to be geometrically more expensive than my first, right? If we automate these, we can get to that state where we're able to take a posture where we're constantly evaluating data, figuring out which data actually adds to our ability to analyze the situation and make a better decision, and then bringing that insight through to that decision process. Well, we need to rethink our approach to data management and reporting in the context of this value chain, given the capabilities we now have. You literally can take a charge card, spin up a Hadoop cluster on Amazon relatively cheaply, and prove something to your boss before your boss is any the wiser that you've done any of this. And I'm not just saying this because my team might have done it to me before. It's not just for the Fortune 100 biggest companies that Accenture deals with. Really can, and you see it happening today, startups managing really huge data loads profitably because of these technologies. The thought I'd like to leave you all with is back to my familiar story of making fun of the DBA and sort of blowing that out all the way up to the CIO and saying, a lot of times in organizations these days, the IT department is a barrier to unlocking the value of data. The formalisms around data management that allow us to manage financial transactions don't need to apply to every last drop of data in an organization. You'll have a data warehouse where good data goes to die.